This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and I'm here today with Tim Burke. He's a semi-retired broadcast news anchor. This is a first for the show, and he now enjoys narrating and producing audiobooks, promos, IVR phone system messages, public service announcements, radio, and video voiceovers from his home-based studio. It takes a fair amount of effort, but he loves being his own boss on his own schedule, and it's great getting up every day knowing he can do what he really enjoys. He's been working at home for about 6 or 7 months now, and he's earning about $1,000 a month, and it's increasing. So he's joining us today from Big Rapids, Michigan in the United States. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is so exciting. And we were talking before we got on the air, and he's in the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group, but also is a student in one of the courses over at Proofread Anywhere. And we're going to get into why he wanted to become a proofreader in just a moment. But I wanted some more details of what you do from home. You have a home studio, and you still work as a news anchor. Is that correct?
No, I do not. I completely retired from the radio business. Right now, as you can probably tell just by the news in general, radio news business is absolutely insane right now.
Really? Why is that?
So much of it is because a lot of the smaller local stations are being bought up by these larger conglomerates. So it's not unusual for, you'll come into work one day and get a phone call and they'll say, no, the station got bought out by so-and-so. You're all out of a job. Goodbye.
What? That's crazy.
That's one of the adjectives I use for it.
So is that what happened to you?
No, what happened with me, here again, because the news business has gotten so insane, was I tend to want to be very fair and truthful as possible in my reporting. Well, the owner of the station and I did not always agree on exactly what should be reported and how. And so, long story short, he eventually just found a way to let me go. And I'll be honest, it did not break my heart when this happened.
That's always good.
Yeah, although at that point, because I had just moved to Big Rapids, because I had been born and raised in the Detroit area, I spent a lot of time in the IT industry. We don't need to go into that there. But I eventually transitioned into radio. And then I spent some time, a couple of years in Morgantown, West Virginia, and worked at a station there. Then I was offered a position back in Michigan, and I thought, well, at least I'll be in the same state as the rest of my family. So I moved here, and once I did lose the job, I didn't want to have to move again. I love the house that I'm at. I've got a gorgeous little house with a creek running through my front yard on an acre of land. And I thought, I don't want to have to pull up stakes and move again.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, so I had been dabbling in the voiceover industry for a couple of years. I'd done a couple little things, but this gave me the opportunity to go at it full time. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm taking it slowly. There's a lot of voiceover work to be had out there. Even when you call a business, and there's a voice that says, for such and such, press 1. For such and such, press 2. Somebody records that and gets paid to do it. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of stuff out there. There's audiobooks, there's commercials, there's narratives for corporate, there's narratives for films. But like any decent business, it's exploding right now, but it's very competitive as well. And so I'm starting out slow. I'm doing audiobooks, which for me, has exploded. Right now, I have completed 11 audiobooks that are out on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. And I currently have 8 in production at the same time.
Wow.
So it's all of a sudden, and a lot of that has been repeat business. A number of the things I've done, the authors and whatnot have spread word about what I do. So I'm getting contracts now that I don't even have to audition for. They just get a hold of me and say, I've got a book, I want you to do it. Here's a contract. So things are going very well on that end of the world. I'm very happy that this happened. And let's face it, audiobooks are wonderful. I love doing them, but they don't pay real well. So I do want to move myself into more commercial work where there's a lot more money to be had.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, there is an upside, of course, to audiobooks in that there's so many self-published authors these days that want to release audiobooks. And I mean, it's kind of the same with proofreading. You're not going to get paid a lot working with a first-time author who's publishing their own book, but it's great to get the experience. And then you build up that experience to then pitch yourself to people who are more established, who are, working with real publishers, or in the voiceover world, working in the commercial stuff that can pay more. And of course, you'd have that repeat work as well. I think that's great. I mean, you're enjoying yourself. And yeah, with the explosion of self-publishing, there are so many books. So there's tons of proofreading work, tons of voiceover work. Tell me how you got the idea to start doing proofreading as well.
Well, because a number of the scripts I've gotten for some audiobooks were nigh on unreadable. They were, grammatical, punctuation, spelling nightmares. And I do a lot of basic proofreading while I'm doing my production work. A lot of times, even ones that have been proofed, a lot of times it looks good when it's written, but when you read it out loud, it just sounds funny.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
I'll change things around, and I work with the authors. I let them know what I'm doing. In fact, I've got one author over in England who loves it because what I do is I take the script and I mark it up as I'm going when I'm doing my recording and production work. And then I send him the marked up script and he uses that for his next release of the book. So he gets all this proofreading basically for free, which is why I to get your course so I can start charging for that as well.
Well, in my opinion, you can start charging for it now if you're already doing it, and then you can charge more once you know more of what you're doing. But for the basic service that it sounds like you're doing, feel free to add that on as an additional charge. I mean, if you're doing it anyway, but if you're given the marked up version, you should definitely charge for that. I would totally do that. I think that's really cool. And I think that's advice I give to any authors that are strapped for cash and maybe they can't hire a proofreader. First, I say they should talk to me because, my students would love the experience. They get lots of experience within the course, but working with first-time authors is a great partnership. First-time newbie proofreaders just got out of the course. They're just looking for their first book to proofread so they can have that underneath their belt, so to speak. And then, these new authors are, strapped for cash sometimes as well. And partnering up with somebody from one of my courses is just a really good match. And then they can both grow together. But there's so many authors out there. There's so many words to proofread. It's just crazy. And so it's just kind of funny how you stumbled across just by reading these voiceover scripts. But it's so true. Like, if you don't hire a proofreader, then at the very least, read your book out loud, because when people read, they hear voices in their heads, right? And it's a good kind of voice. And that's the way I proofread a lot of my stuff as well. Of course, I have my team proofread it. I'm editing my book right now, and I'm going to record my own audiobook. So while I'm editing, I'm making sure that the words sound good if you speak them out loud. And my final proofread, my final edit on the book is going to be read out loud as well, because it's just the best way to find things that sound funny, things that are too wordy. And I tend to get wordy when I just talk, as I probably am doing right now. But don't we all, especially when we get talking about something that we're excited about. But reading out loud is a great way to find stray errors, as long as you read slow enough, which, in voiceover work, you definitely have to as well. So what did your life look like before you started working at home, when you were still working at the news doing reporting?
Well, basically, because I was a news anchor reporter, I was on air, but I also went out and did in the field reporting and covered, especially in smaller towns like Big Rapids and Morgantown. Well, even down in Detroit, I did this. Go cover the city council meeting, go cover the county commission meeting, that kind of stuff. So basically, I was on call 24/7. Something broke, I had to go out and deal with it. That type of lifestyle, I'm single, so it wasn't so bad, but it gets old after a while. And, it dawned on me, I bought this gorgeous little house that I love, and I could hardly spend any time here because I was out working so hard. Although I did like what I was doing, don't get me wrong. But when I think of the contrast, I could almost kick myself for why didn't I start doing this beforehand? Because, I spent a lot of time and spent a lot of gas and just traveling and interviewing people. But again, that was helped me here. Because of all of that, my editing skills are pretty good as far as audio goes. So I can get through that pretty quickly. Have you done an audiobook before, Caitlin?
I haven't. This is going to be my first one.
Okay. You're going to find that because most people think, well, what do? You just sit down and read this book. It's real easy.
Nope.
Think again, because it takes, on average, most narrators 3 to 4 hours worth of work to finish 1 hour of good audio. And a lot of it is in editing.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be sitting there doing editing and editing and editing and editing. But it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
I don't savor editing. In fact, I was just editing for about an hour before this interview. But once you get the hang of it and you get faster at it, it's not so bad. But it's also nice once it's all done and it all sounds good. And it sounds like that's what you talk like naturally. Nobody talks like that naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So it does take some effort to make these books sound good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm admittedly not planning on doing my own editing. I stopped editing my own videos as well. Like I'll get the scripts all set and I'll make sure I'll read them through and then I'll use a teleprompter and read the video scripts. And if it's like a 2-3 minute video, I'll edit it myself.
Yeah.
But if it's something longer, I don't even want to look at it again after I've done sat there for an hour and a half, recorded a webinar or a workshop or something. I'm like, I'm wiped. The last thing I want to do is sit there and listen to the whole thing and for 5 hours while I edit it. Because it's so true. I mean, editing is what takes the longest. And so, I mean, if you look at it that way, then even somebody who maybe doesn't have a radio voice or an audiobook recording voice, there's still opportunity to work in the voiceover industry doing edits of the voiceover work, because there's probably people out there that don't want to edit. They just want to do the talking and they'll pay somebody else to do the editing, and that frees them up. Much like court reporting, court reporters don't get paid to proofread, which is why they hire proofreaders. And so voiceover actors get paid to record. They don't get paid to edit. And so you can charge extra to include your own editing or charge a little bit more to be able to pay an editor and save yourself some time, be able to take on some more voiceover work and still come out on top, basic outsourcing, that kind of thing.
Although, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing too, because I've found that, if I told somebody I won't edit this, proof it unless you pay for it, and they come back and say, well, we can't afford it, just read it as is. Something that is written poorly is much more difficult to read.
Yeah.
It's a lot more work to actually get through it. So I'm working it to my advantage simply by going through and proofing it beforehand. But also getting back to, what I did before I was in the radio industry, I worked for quite a few years in the IT industry.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a company called CompuWare. I was a consultant. They flew me all over the country, and I did data analysis for large corporations, insurance companies, etc. But, I got let go from there because they did a reorg. I'm one of those people that, I buy gas. I go walk into the gas station to pay for it. I talk to the clerk behind the counter, and one of the first things they say is, are you on radio? Because I've got one of those voices.
Yep.
But here again, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, I do have one of those voices, but particularly in voiceover industry, I've been turned down for any number of auditions because I sound too good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, particularly in commercial work where there's a lot of money, what the clients are looking for is somebody who sounds like the guy next door, somebody who their audience will identify with. And you don't have to have the radio voice to be able to do stuff in the voiceover world. What you do have to have, though, is a lot of persistence.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm going to step back for a minute because I wanted to comment on something you said about, you bought this beautiful house and you weren't able to spend enough time in it. And it really brought to light the goal most people have is not to make money. Yeah, the money is the tool, but the money is not the end all be all. It's the freedom. It's the flexibility. That's why working at home is awesome, because we get to spend more time in our beautiful houses and with our families and doing the things we want to do. We have that flexibility. We're not commuting all this time. We're not on call 24/7. We build our own schedules, and that is often the why. We want the freedom and the flexibility. And so it doesn't matter, you said you're producing audiobooks and it doesn't pay that much and you're going slowly, but it doesn't matter because you enjoy what you're doing and you're getting paid while you learn. I think it's really hard to beat that.
You got that right. And I cannot tell you how much of a difference it has made in my life to be able to get up every morning. And by the way, I don't set my alarm. I don't have to. I let my body tell me how much sleep it needs. not somebody who has a deadline. But I can't tell you what a joy it is to get up every morning and look forward to what I'm going to do that day, almost every day.
Yeah, you really cannot put a price on that. And I'm sure that there's some people at home listening to this right now, or maybe they're on a commute and they're listening to this and they're like, wow, I really, really want that. Well, what was it like when you were first getting started? Were you confident, or were there mental or emotional challenges that got in the way? What was that like for you?
Well, yeah, it was scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working with a voiceover talent out of Chicago right now who has been doing voiceover work out of his house for 11 plus years. So he has a lot of experience. And the way he puts it is, this is what he felt like when he first started. And he says it's still true to this day, although he's a lot more confident. He says, you're walking on a high wire and there's no nets.
Wow.
You're out there doing it yourself. It's all down to you. So yes, it is on the scary side to get started. But, as things progress, in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, I've now got 19 books, 8 of them in production. And every time I get a contract, it's still an incredible rush, even though I've got quite a bit under my belt. But being able to do that on your own terms, that's, again, like everything in life, it's a double-edged sword when you say on your own terms. Yes, I've got all the freedom and I can do creative things, et cetera, but there's nobody else to blame, nothing else to fall back on. I'm the one who has to be there to do it.
Oftentimes people will want to have confidence before they get started, and or not to feel any fear. They're waiting for that fear to go away, and they're waiting to feel super confident to get started. And oftentimes, most of the time, I'd say, you don't get that confidence until you start doing the thing that scares you. And then you realize it's not going to kill you. And that's where the confidence comes. You get better at the thing. You go through the scary parts and you get the work and you produce results for people, and you start seeing that consistency. And that consistency of doing things and having success with it is what builds the confidence. You're not going to get confidence in many cases before you even start doing the thing. I mean, people come to me and Proofread Anywhere all the time, and also in work and homeschool. And they're like, well, I don't really want to get started until I feel confident that this is going to work out. And they're trying to see the whole staircase before they even take the first step. And the thing is with the staircase is you build the staircase. So you're not going to see it until you start building stairs. And so I always say, step 58, the top stair, is not going to make any sense to you because you haven't got there yet. You haven't built it yet. And so take a deep breath and take the one step, build your first step, just take an action. You're not going to get any traction without taking action first. And that's where the confidence comes in. Yeah.
I love that analogy. Another analogy I use, I'm also an accomplished musician, and I used to teach music, private lessons. I taught piano.
Nice.
And I've got a degree on classical organ. So when you're playing classical organ, you're often is not doing 2 parts on the right hand, 2 parts on the left hand, and 1 on each foot. And I've had people ask me, how the devil do you do that? The analogy I use, and this applies for, getting into something new, I tell them, stop and think about it. If you had to think about every muscle that you need to use and coordinate to get up and walk, you'd never get out of your chair. You just get up and do it. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. And when you were learning to walk, you fell down a lot, but you're pretty good at it now, aren't you? So it's the same type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's absolutely the same type of thing. And so I'm hoping that people are listening at home, and if they're feeling that kind of fear, if they're feeling those doubts of things that they can't get started unless you understand the whole process, unless you know how to do all the things, like you can learn as you go, and the time to go is right now. So take your first step. What about people in your sphere of influence? Maybe people living in Big Rapids, or your family or friends that knew that you're making that transition after you got cut from the radio station and you're starting to work at home. Were they supportive? Were they giving you unsolicited feedback? Were they doubtful? How did you navigate through that?
Well, a lot of them, particularly family, they've seen me transition from one job to another a number of times. But first off, a lot of my family is still in the mindset of, a job is something you do somewhere else from 9 to 5. And they could not see how this could possibly work. But now when I post things, quite frankly, I like to brag about my successes. And I'll post things out on Facebook, etc. Like now I've got, 18 books going on. And there's a lot more support for it. And a lot of people are coming back with, well, how do you really do this? I don't understand how you can sit at home and make a living. So there wasn't a lot of support. Again, here's that analogy. You're on a high wire and there's no nets. But the fact that, success speaks for itself. So now that things are going well, there's a lot more support, of course. But there was a lot of people that either would tell me that, I don't think this is really going to work, or just wouldn't say anything, which was basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But here again, I saw the opportunity. I saw that there's a lot of people out there that are able to do this kind of thing. Why not me?
Exactly.
I was kind of forced into the situation. Again, when I was let go from the radio station that I'm at, I spent a number of months scrambling, trying to find another job at another radio station. And I was fully ready to pull up stakes, sell the house, and go where the job was. But now that, with the event of the technology, particularly the internet, but, even, people ask, I can't, it costs thousands of dollars to set up a studio at home. No, the audio booth that I work in, I designed and built myself for less than $1,000. And other than that, a good recording space that doesn't have much echo in it, and a decent mic, which you can get for less than $200, and recording software, which you can get good recording software for free, you're set to go. Just have to be willing to get out there and start putting yourself out there, and have to be somewhat thick-skinned too. I don't keep track of it anymore, but I can guarantee you the number of rejection notices compared to the number of acceptances I've got, is huge, because nobody's voice is going to fit everything.
Right.
But then again, try something new. Case in point. A while back, I've got this radio voice. Most of the work that I do is stuff that I've got history books, self-help books, books on spirituality, that kind of thing. I auditioned for a book that I never thought I would, but I liked the book itself because I like fantasy fiction type stuff. It's a book that was told first person from the point of view of a 14-year-old girl.
Wow.
My voice doing this. And the author loved it. When I sent in the audition, she says, I sure hope you'll do my book for me. And so I, of course, accepted the contract. And the more I got into the book, it was a riot to do it. Because the premise of the book is this 14-year-old girl learns that she can see and talk to ghosts. And long story short, she winds up at this special school called the Vita Postmortem Academy for people that can talk to ghosts. They call themselves visionaries. But the fun thing about it for me as a voice artist was all of the teachers at this school were famous people from history.
Huh, how about that?
So I got to do imitations. I did JFK, I did Albert Einstein, I did Pablo Picasso, I even did Marilyn Monroe. And because when you're doing a book, they're not expecting you to sound like that character. They expect, somebody reading it. But she loved my Albert Einstein. It was funny. But like I said, I never thought I would ever get something like that. Once I get out from under this load that I just recently got, I want to go out and do some more auditions for more of that type of thing because they're just so much fun to do.
Yeah. And you really never know what you're going to like or what's going to be a good fit for you until you try. And I think a lot of us will spend our time trying to find the perfect thing or the thing that you're passionate about before you get started. And the pursuit of passion and perfection before you get started keeps more people at the starting line, twiddling their thumbs than anything else, I think, because they're waiting for, something that's perfect or things they love everything about. And there's nothing out there that is perfect. And if you don't know what your passion is, sometimes you just got to start. And then I didn't find the passion that I have now for helping people make money at home until I started proofreading. And then I started teaching people how to do what I did. And it just kind of snowballed. And at any time you can pivot away from something that you don't like. You're not setting in stone when you decide, hey, maybe I want to try proofreading. Maybe I want to try transcription. Maybe I want to try these things. It's stepping stones. You won't find often what you're passionate about until you start trying things out. And oftentimes people find their passions in places they never, ever expected, but they got started and they start building that staircase, you can always build a different color stair for the next stair. If the stair you built, isn't your favorite, you can skip that stair, whatever, make it a little bit, wobbly for the next person. I don't know. You can have fun with it. And we take ourselves too seriously as well. And I think if we just loosen up, lighten up, know that it's very unlikely for most people that they're never going to live under a bridge too. And I had to tell myself that back when Ben and I were first married, my husband and I were first married, we were strapped for cash, and then I got fired. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. Like, we have one income and it wasn't very much. And I was like, wait a second. I'm never going to live under a bridge. So how are we going to work this? And then we just came up with a plan. But oftentimes we just get so overwhelmed with, the worst case scenario that we're paralyzed to take any action, or we feel like it has to be the perfect thing to solve all of our problems. The reality is the success happens over time with consistency. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight, and we have to commit to it. We got to commit to building the stairs, because if you don't build the stairs and you take a step, you're going to go fall flat on your face, and that's no fun either. So, so you're growing your business, you're wanting to get into the more corporate work, and I think that's great. You're seeing your business really start to grow. You got a mountain of work, and you're probably going to go back to work as soon as we get off this call, which is awesome. And I know there's some people, I know there's some people that have listened to this whole interview and they've been very inspired, but there's still people that are scared. So the final question I always ask every guest in the show is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get started working at home but is scared?
Do it. Just try. I mean, you can always go back to what it was you were pursuing if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But it's like you were talking earlier about people who say, this isn't perfect. What is perfect? Perfect is what I decide it is.
Exactly.
And, one time I thought perfect would be getting another radio job at a big station. Right now, that is not the case. But, take the leap. Yeah, it's scary. Do due diligence. Don't just go into it cold. Do the kind of research you need to be prepared as best you can. But don't make your best you can, that's in air quotes, so far advanced that you can't obtain it. It's baby steps. It's little things. It's like me. I'm planning on growing it, but right now I'm just doing audiobooks, which, like I said, don't pay very well, but I love doing it. And I have the opportunity, and I have a plan in place as to how I'm going to get from here to there. But I don't worry about there. I just try to do what I'm doing here and now as best I can, and let the future take care of itself.
Yeah, I love that. In your application, you included a really good quote from Brian Tracy, and I want to share that. It says, move out of your comfort zone. You can only grow if you're willing to feel awkward and uncomfortable when you try something new. Again, that's a quote by Brian Tracy. I love it, and it's so, so true. Tim, I want to say thank you so much for being on the Work at Home Heroes podcast. And I want to let our listeners know that they can talk to you in the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group. They can reach out to you there. We've tagged you in a thread over in that group, so you can actually go and ask Tim questions right there. Where can people reach you if they've got a question specifically? Do you have a website or something that we can include in the show notes maybe?
I do have a website, although if you go to it, please do not be very critical, because I have not updated this thing literally in years. The website, I have set myself up with an LLC. It's called Spoken Word Creation. My website is spokenwordcreation.com. Spoken Word Creation is all one word. There is an email link there. Or if you want to just email me directly, you can email me at tmichael, because Michael's my middle name, so tmichael at spokenwordcreation.com. And of course, through the Facebook group there for Work at Home Heroes, you can send me a thread there, private message me, whatever, and I'll do my best to reply and answer any questions you have. I may not do it right away, but I do my best to respond to people who reach out to me as much as I absolutely can.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. That's very generous. Thank you again for being on the show.
And thank you for having me, Caitlin.
Well, thanks again for listening, everyone. I hope you got some value from this episode. There will be links in the show notes. As always, feel free to join our Work at Home Heroes Facebook community, where we discuss all the episodes in a dedicated thread. If you found this episode useful, or any of the past episodes, I'd love it if you would leave us a review. It will help us reach more people with our message and keep bringing you these success stories. Talk to you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.